Welcome to the August the 6th, 1996 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city, some of the people that are movers and shakers that made the history happen and continue making it happen as of this date. This is our history tape number 283, and we're very pleased today to do a mini history on what is now the Nations Bank of Grand Prairie, Texas. Its site and what was there prior to the bank being on that location. And we're so very pleased to welcome to the set the immediate past president of Nations Bank in Grand Prairie, Texas, Mr. Jim Swafford. Welcome to the set.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
We're so glad to have a past president of the bank, I believe past president almost of the quality of life and all of this good things. You're losing all of your presidencies at one time. That's great, isn't it?
That's good.
All right, but let's talk about your bank. You really feel like it was still your bank, even though that you're now a private citizen. And even though you were president of the school board and on the school board several years, on the city council, a mover and shaker in the community for these many years. Tell us a little bit about the history that we want to document of the Nations Bank building as you left it the other day.
The Nations Bank building located at 801 West Freeway, actually the corner of West Freeway and West Jefferson Street.
All right.
That 8-story building was constructed on that site and occupied in 1983, in March 1983. And the site that it was on was formerly the Curtis Wright Airport,
Yes.
Grand Prairie, Texas, which was a Naval and Army Air Force training facility after the First World War and also for the Second World War.
Yes.
A lot of pilots that flew for the Army at that time, the Army and the Navy, trained at that field. And,
you didn't have any jets then, did you?
No, we didn't have
Little
any jets.
biplanes and...
We had everything from biplanes to propeller planes, and it was sort of an off-site training facility for the Dallas Naval Air Station.
Yes, for Old Hensley Field.
Right.
And a supplement to that.
Right.
All right, at that site also, I believe, over the years, they finally developed an armory at that old hangar. What happened to the old hangar?
Ruthie, as I recall, the old hangar that was left over from the training facility
Yes.
was occupied probably sometime in the 60s by the Air National Guard, Texas Air National Guard. They had both fixed wing and helicopter type aircraft, rotary wing. And the old hangar, which was quite an edifice,
Yes.
really, was on the west side of the site. The hangar had some adjacent buildings that supported the hangar facility, and but it was the main facility. Mm-hmm. And I remember when it was torn down, it took quite an act of Congress to tear the building down, because it was one of those that was put up for the duration, and I guess it would have lasted forever had it not been forcibly removed by human hands. But
were you on the council at the time the city bought that property and made it ready for something else?
Yes, the offer that was made was through the U.S. federal government and the Texas Air National Guard, that if the city of Grand Prairie would provide another site, a suitable site for the Guard operations, then they would give us that property. And
Yes.
I was on the council at the time. That was 78, somewhere around in there, and we did find a site and were able to acquire that site down on the west side of the Dallas Naval Air Station, and built the buildings for the Air National Guard. And then the federal government gave us that site, which we subsequently platted as an industrial park.
Yes.
Turned a railroad spur into the site from the old Texas and Pacific Railroad that runs through Grand Prairie, and were able to develop some very nice industrial locations with rail service, which was sort of a unique thing, about the only thing in the area at that time that had any rail service of any size was the Great Southwest Industrial District. Not that we were trying to compete with the Great Southwest Industrial District, but it was a closer in-town site, and we were fortunate to pick up a developer from New Jersey, I. Heller Company, and they came in and developed the warehouses that you now see on that location, all with good rail service and good highway access.
Now, let's get back to the main large building that's located there, because that houses the nation's bank. And I'd like for you to get back to the very beginning of the bank that has evolved and has become Nation's Bank at that site. Where did the first bank start, and who started it, and give us a little history of that bank.
Well, the two original founders of what's now Nation's Bank, it was founded as Midway National Bank.
Of Grand Prairie, Texas.
Of Grand Prairie, Texas, in 1963.
Okay.
And the two original founders were a gentleman that still lives in Grand Prairie, Dean Dolly,
All right.
and a gentleman who has since passed away, Boyd Ridgway, along with the help of Republic National Bank of Dallas. Though in those days, Texas was what we know as a unit banking state, and other banks could not own pieces of smaller banks. So they helped us get chartered, and they owned the minority stockholders, but the directors themselves at the time, along with Mr. Dolly, Mr. Ridgway, put the bank together, and it originally opened its doors in 1963, and I believe it was like March of 1963.
Okay.
It opened at 308 West Main, a very small building, probably honestly wasn't over 20 feet wide. By the time you got the teller cages in and a few desks, I think maximum capacity was 2 people in the teller line.
Yes. Yes, and it started there right across from the City Hall Annex at this present time.
Right.
Yes, all right. Could you name some of the original organizers or the board of directors?
Well, along with Mr. Ridgway and Mr. Dolly, John Wright, a local attorney, also Jack Kincaid, another local attorney, Johnny Jenks, and I'm sure there were others, but at my age, Ruthie, it kind of starts failing me. So
That gives us a quorum, so we're in business.
that's some of the ones that I recall.
All right, and then how long did it remain there on Main Street, and where did it go after that?
In 1965, the bank had been acquired by a new group of owners, headed by a soon-to-be mayor of Grand Prairie, Kurt Wagner, and the original president of the bank was Mr. Al Waldrop.
And that's when it was Midway on Main Street?
That's correct.
All right, okay.
And in a couple of years, Mr. Wagner and another group of owners had acquired the bank and built a brand new 3-story building with a full basement at 530 South Carrier Parkway. That's the little building. It's still there, shaped like a football. And
the little white building.
The little white building.
All right.
That's now Bank of America headquarters.
Yes. All right.
And the bank relocated there in 1965. At the time, the bank occupied the half the basement, which was the customer service and safe deposit area, and then the bank occupied all the first floor, which was the teller area, new accounts on the north end, and the executive officers and loan department on the south end.
And who was the president of the bank then?
Roland Walden.
Roland Walden came on board. He came from Quanah, Texas,
Quanah,
I believe.
Texas, yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
yes. That's great. And did he have a new board then?
He had a new board, and some of the folks that came on the board, along with some of those I just named that were original charter members of the board, were, of course, your husband, the Honorable Vernon Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Neil Bile, who was at that time head of personnel at American Airlines.
Yes.
Carlisle Smith Jr., a local architect. Ed Micas, who was a local contractor. Doyle Smith, who was executive vice president of Great Southwest Corporation. Earl Burleson, owner of Serviceman Supply. And James Castles, owner of Hardware and Metal Industries. And again, I'm sure I missed one or two, but that's what I recall.
All right, and when did Jim Swafford come on board? I believe before you went into banking, you were with one of the utilities.
That's correct.
Tell us about that.
Texas Electric Service Company.
Yeah.
I had spent 20 years with that organization, which included my education.
As an engineer?
No, my my degree is in engineering.
Yes.
However, I had moved, after being out of UTA for about a year, I had moved over to the sales side
All right.
of Texas Utilities and spent the last 3 years I was with them doing economic development work, traveling a area around New York City. And then I came with the bank in May of 1975
Okay.
to set up the marketing arm and the marketing effort.
Under
of
whose
this
direction?
bank. Under Mr. Walden and
All
the
right.
board.
All right.
And I had been in Grand Prairie, of course, prior to that,
Yes.
and had made a lot of friends that were on the board. Mr. Wagner at that time was mayor, and I had done some community work with Mr. Wagner and several of the other board members, and I heard there was an opening out here, and I applied for it, and believe it or not, I got it.
Yes, and you became a vice president of the board?
I did become a vice president, and really, to be honest with you, I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I soon found out.
Yes, all right. Did you have a mentor in the banking business that was really helpful to you when you came out of a utility into banking that really did spur you on and help you?
Well, yes, Ruthie, a couple of people, a young fellow, in fact, I say young fellow, he's about my age, named Ken Eskridge.
Yes.
Was cashier, vice president cashier of Midway National Bank at the time, and Ken sort of took me under his wing and taught me operations. Excuse me, and at the same time, a gentleman named Morris Hampton, known more affectionately to everybody in Grand Prairie.
He is the lone man of the world, isn't he?
He was the lone man of the world.
He could make a loan.
He could loan the money, and if you didn't pay him back, you had to deal with Hamp personally. And so Mr. Hampton took me under his wing along with Ken Eskridge and taught me the loan side of the bank. Ken taught me the operations side, so I was extremely fortunate to work with those two kind of folks on a daily basis, and really got a quick education and an excellent education in practical banking. I got the chance to go to school. I went to graduate school at SMU, and just got a very well-rounded on-the-job training course on how to be a banker.
When did Republic come into the picture?
Republic, as I mentioned, had always been in the picture to a certain extent.
But more forcibly,
Right.
and the name was changed to
They
Republic.
came and bought the bank in 1977. Some of the Texas banking laws had changed, and they were able to purchase the remainder of the stock from the directors and owners in 1977, and the name did not change immediately. I want to think it was less than a year. It
Yes.
changed to Republic Bank of Grand Prairie,
All right.
and stayed Republic Bank of Grand Prairie for quite some time.
And then what did it evolve into a new name?
Well,
First Republic
actually,
or something like that?
in 1988, Republic Bank Dallas and First National Bank Dallas merged, and they and all their affiliates, which we were at that time, became First Republic Bank, and they all had the different locale names tacked on them, so we were First Republic Bank of Grand Prairie.
And then what happened to, how did NCNB get into this picture?
In 1988, the First Republic Banks of Texas failed, and a bank from North Carolina National Bank, or as you mentioned,
NCNB?
NCNB, was acquired the assets of the First Republic Bank Corporation from the Resolution Trust Corporation and the FDIC, and they became the owners, and that was late July of 1988.
And all of this time you weathered the storm, you stayed through Republic, First Republic, and then NCNB, and then finally retired as president of Nations Bank in July 1996.
Well, there's so many bullets coming my way that I tried to stay out of the way of them. Actually, the name change, as I recall, from NCNB was made in about 1992 when it became Nations Bank to, by that time, the NCNB Corporation had acquired several regional banks, the CNS Sovereign Group in the southeast, and then some of the Sun Banks. I'm sorry, it wasn't Sun Banks. It was a large California multi-bank holding corporation, and they had become more regionally oriented than locally, and so the name was selected Nations Bank to try to more show that it was hopefully more than a one-state bank.
Of all of the years that you have been president of, whether it be NCNB or Nations Bank, when were you first promoted to president?
1985.
1985 you became president. And from then until 1996, that's a pretty long tenure to go through. Of all of the things that you've done and seen happen and everything, what is the highlight of that about 9-year career or 11-year career, whatever?
Well, the highlight would have to be the growth of the bank along with the community. We're still, even though we're a very large institution, we're still a community bank. And I'd say that the highlight of my career had to be the growth of the institution itself. Of course, a lot of folks contributed to that. The highlight was the employees that I was able to work with for those years that helped put us on the map. And certainly the most important group was our customers. And they stayed with us. We were able to attract new business, and when I came with the bank in 1975, total assets of the bank were about $16 million. And when we started diversifying some of the assets of the bank under the Nations Bank banner a couple of years ago, we were in excess of $125 million. So I'd say that has to be the highlight of my career, the tremendous growth that the bank experienced actually from the time I came. And as I recall, when I was elected president of the bank, we were about $85 million, so we grew another $45 million.
And over all of these years, you've still done community service.
Yes, ma'am.
You hold a position on the city council as an appointed person on the housing authority. You're also into the Quality of Life Foundation in a big way, and have been real tremendous in doing those things and other things in the community. Besides that, you've let Judy, your wife, I believe, retire.
That's correct.
And so now you're footloose, fancy-free, ready to play golf. And if you have 2 golf games in one day, you just get to pick and choose now, don't you?
I may get to take Judy to one of them, but she can't go to both of them.
She cannot go to both. That is out of the question.
Actually, I've already found the greatest thing about retirement is when you give a check to someone in a store and they look at you and say, "May I have your work phone number?" And you say, "I don't have one."
That's great. Oh, that is great. Well, we have about 1 more minute that we can talk about things about bank and the evolution of the bank. This is an invaluable interview because just think how much research it would take me to go to the library and pull all of this stuff out, one article at a time. And we really do appreciate your expertise in bringing us up to date on all of this good stuff, because we like to know where we are. And after we've researched your bank, who knows, we may go and trace back the Prairie State Bank, who went back to about 1908 or something to that effect. But we have at the front here a picture of that Randy Souders, an artist, painted an original oil that you have on site at NCNB in the boardroom right now that I've coveted for a long time. But this wonderful print, we want to clue into that and let Louis bring us up on that. And while he's cluing in on that, we're going to add another person to the set with your permission. Is that okay?
That's great.
As a retired president of the bank, you're going to give us permission to change up a little bit and fade in and out the window?
I don't have any right to give you permission, but you have it.
I have it anyhow. Okay. Louis, if you'll bring us right on down with this picture of the old, I believe that's the old Lou Foote flying field. This wonderful shot of the Lou Foote airfield that was taken from a painting by Mr. Randy Souders, and as a print you've brought on the set today, Mr. Jim. How did that come about? Do you have the original of this?
Well, Ruthie, when we built the bank on that site, we commissioned Randy Souders, who's a Fort Worth artist, to research the history of the site and to paint a picture of his vision of what was going on with that site. And of course, as you mentioned, the Luffield Airfield, actually the name over the hangar reads Curtis Wright Airport, Grand Prairie, Texas.
That's it.
That's it on the left side of the picture. And this was this painting depicts when they had the grand opening of the airport. And you'll see there's a biplane in the center of the picture with a wing walker on top, and he's picking up another passenger from the open cabriolet on the bottom. And on the right side, you see grandstands.
Yes.
And so this was Randy's picture, his mental picture that he had developed of the opening of the Curtis Wright Airport, Grand Prairie, Texas. And we commissioned him to do that since that's the site the bank was built on and was being opened. And we gave away, oh gosh, hundreds of these offset prints of Randy's print. And like you said, we still have the original oil in the bank boardroom.
Yes. And we have an original with us today.
That's correct.
Yes, we have a guest. As when you retired as president, we swapped and got a bank manager. But guess what? Y'all were so nice to us. You brought someone back that had been here a long time ago and also a Grand Prairie resident. Sonia Nelson, we are just so glad to have you on board. Thank you for being here today. We want to add on to this history tape a little bit about the real Sonia Nelson. Yes, and when you first became affiliated with the bank before you took a sojourn and got promoted and went to other places, tell us a little bit about yourself, would you?
Well, pardon me, I started in 1977, right? I think it was right the very same weekend that Republic Bank bought the bank. It was really kind of interesting. And I started out as a secretary to the president and just kind of...
And who was the president at that time?
Roland Walden.
Roland Walden, okay.
Worked for him for a few years and then just kind of did a bunch of different things around the bank. And in 1994 I left. Under Jim's leadership, he prepared me to be a banking center manager and shipped me off to Duncanville for 2.5 years. And
so that's 2.5 years in Duncanville, Texas?
Duncanville.
Okay. Were you with NCNB there at that place?
Yes, with Nations Bank.
With Nations Bank. It had been changed to Nations Bank.
Yes.
All right. And tell us a little bit about your little family here in Grand Prairie, Texas.
3 children and a daughter-in-law. That's kind of getting used to that one.
All right. And you would name drop?
Jason and Dion, they are our graduating seniors at Dallas Baptist University.
All right.
And then Adam is going to be a sophomore at South Grand Prairie, and Angela's an 8th grader at Jackson.
Yes, all right.
And we live in South Grand Prairie, go to Inglewood Baptist Church.
Oh, that's great. And do you have a husband also?
Have a husband, yes.
You would name him,
handle
or we would be in bad trouble if we did
We would
not.
be in trouble. His name is Andy, and he works for the Dallas Morning News.
Oh, that is really great. And what do you think about the banking business?
Well, since it's the only thing I've ever done, I enjoy it. I wouldn't be here without Jim Swafford, I can tell you that. He's been my mentor through the years. There's times I've thanked him for that and times I've been a little angry at him for it. But I think it's great. I am so excited to be back in Grand Prairie. It's just, you never know how much you appreciate it till you leave and you work off somewhere else. And there's just something really special about living and working in the same community.
And now that you've been back and gotten your feet on the ground, you're there without Mr. Jim Swafford.
It's scary.
Is he going to allow you to telephone him once in a while and say, what do I do with this?
He's on my speed dial.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh, that is really great.
But there's a slight charge.
There's a slight charge for that. I knew that since he's consultant of the world now, he'll probably send you a bill like Mr. John Wright sends you a telephone bill if you call him and ask him the time of day. That's the way it goes. And John is so appreciative and always grins when I tell him that. All right, Sonia, tell me about your future plans for Nations Bank in Grand Prairie, Texas. Is there anything exciting? Are you going to continue dressing the dolls and doing the toys and doing all the good things for customers that you always have?
Of course, we're going to do the dolls. You know, Jim left me such a wonderful legacy. I have such big shoes to fill. I don't think I can fill them, but I hope I can halfway keep up with them. The community involvement that he does, I'll be getting involved in the community a little bit more once I get in and get settled down a little bit.
Yes.
And we're going to continue to do everything that's been done in the past. It's a success. You don't mess with success.
Well, he's given us such a wonderful history of the bank and its evolution since it was Midway Bank, way back in the dark ages, so to speak. And since he's built it up to all of these great big majestic bucks that you have to manage and do all of these good things for, is there anything special you'd like to tell the people of Grand Prairie?
I think that the specialness about Nations Bank is the fact that even though we are a big bank and we can do a lot of services that some of the smaller banks can't do, we're still a hometown bank. We're still community oriented. The customers are wonderful. I mean, like I said, being gone for 2.5 years, I have such an appreciation for the customers, and I think that it's exciting. We've got an exciting future ahead of us in Grand Prairie, and I look forward to being here as long as Jim was.
Did you work with more than one bank president? Name the bank president you've served, starting with Mr. Walden.
Then there was Jack Bishop
All right.
and Charles Grimes, and then I just worked alongside with Jim.
And over all of these bank presidents, do you have a favorite?
Yes. It's got to be Jim.
It has to be Mr. Jim.
It has to
doesn't
be Jim. That one's
Yes.
hands down.
Yes, because he gave you an opportunity probably that the other fellows
did.
Maybe were a little chauvinistic and maybe not give you that opportunity that Mr.
He did. He did give me an
Well,
opportunity.
Let me add this. I know this isn't a commercial, but she worked for all of it. Sonia's a hardworking lady. She's a very fine businesswoman. She educated herself and raised a family at the same time, getting her bachelor's degree from Dallas Baptist University, I guess it is now, and came all the way from a secretarial position to where she is now, and that's not easy.
Yes.
And but she's the one that put it all together, and I think certainly she's to be commended for that. Some of us might have helped provide a ladder or two, but she's the one that climbed it.
Yes, that's very important. Well, I want to thank you two for being so wonderful to come today and for helping me to make the transition from one president to a bank manager that I already knew, and that was just a blessing, Mr. Jim. And would you please tell all of the bosses at Nations Bank that we're just so grateful for the choice that was made and that they've sent back a real hometown ambassador that really cares about the people there
certainly do.
and that will care about the history, because I'm going to continue documenting probably as long as the good Lord lets me live. Thank you all so very much for helping us make this a very special segment.
Thank you.
And do I get to keep the print?
Now, that's my print. I'll
That
get you.
is your print.
The new manager will get you one.
The new manager will get me a print. Well, I want to thank you all again. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.